Okay, we should be live.
All right.
Okay, cool. Welcome everybody to Angie and I's Tuesday live stream. This week we're over on my channel, Thrive After Abuse here on YouTube. And Angie, go ahead. What's your tell them about your channel and what you do?
Okay. So on my channel, I help people discover, understand, and overcome narcissistic abuse and toxic relationships. And I like to call it toxic relationship rehab. And then I try to help with the evolution part afterward as well. So I'm at Angie Atkinson here on YouTube. You can just type youtube.com/Angie Atkinson or queenbeing.tv into your browser and you'll be there.
Okay. Very cool. Well, we've got lots of people hopping on. James, Sam, Phoenix, Connected, Nails, Crystal. Welcome, welcome. So I guess to get us going, Angie had a great topic idea for us to discuss, or at least to start off with today, and that is the topic of invalidation. So Angie, take it away.
All right. So I was working on a video on this for my channel, and I mentioned to Dana that I thought we should talk about it. So it's fascinating because what happens is a lot of us grow up with some toxic person in our life, whether it's a parent or a bully at school or whatever. I think a lot of time it's a parent, or a parent type figure. Anyway, they invalidate us as individuals. So for example, rather than, saying we did a good job on our grade card because we got all A's and 1B, they point out that 1B and they're like, you can do better than that, or that's not good enough for this family, or whatever. And that's a really mild example. But essentially, and on the flip side of that, we have the thing where when we're talking about the way that we feel, we don't like liver for dinner, let's say, and we're told that everybody likes liver and we just don't know what we're talking about. We like it, we just don't know it yet, for example. And it's a tiny thing like that. But this builds up over time. And sometimes it's far more, aggressive or mean than, you don't like liver, or yes, I do, or whatever. But it ends up teaching us that we can't trust our own feelings and thoughts. And we end up believing that everything we think, feel, say, and do is wrong. And that's why some of us end up feeling crazy, in my opinion. What are your thoughts about it, Dana?
I think this is such an important topic. And I like the examples that you give, like the more mild examples, because this stuff, I think for a lot of survivors of narcissistic abuse, this stuff really flies under the radar. And it's actually a really important piece when it comes to healing, because it's these little comments. It doesn't even matter if they're well-intended or not, but they serve to separate a person from their reality. And by the time somebody is an adult, they, like you were saying, they don't trust their perception of reality. And the unintended consequence of that is that they often look to other people for validation and clarity of and being like, okay, tell me what I should do, and am I on the right path, and what, it's that constant looking outside of ourselves for answers. And that can really cause a person to just get off track and wind up in the bushes, because you don't know who you're taking advice from, and if we don't have that if we're not in alignment with like our internal GPS system, and we can't filter like good advice from bad advice because we just don't trust ourselves, odds are we're going to have this pattern of like restarting in life, like choosing the wrong career, the wrong job, the wrong partner, the wrong, all kinds of things, because we just don't know ourselves.
Yeah. And I think that we end up we can't know ourselves, because when we think,
right.
When we come out naturally with, well, I don't like the way that tastes, or whatever. And the reason I gave such tiny examples, as you kind of alluded to, is because it is so subtle and pervasive. It is so, and sometimes it's major. It's, you love to paint and you're told, and you're really good at it, but you're told artists don't make money, so you stop. I want to grow up and be an artist. No, you can't be an artist. Artists don't make money. So you give up your dream, or whatever. Little things like that. But it seems like such a small, insignificant thing to say to a kid. But when that kid has been brought up to know that everything they think or feel is wrong, unless it agrees with whatever the toxic person in their life thinks or feels, then it really does throw them for a loop. And it puts us in negative toxic relationships as well, I think, as we get older, because it feels more comfortable to have somebody criticizing us and telling us all the things that are wrong about us, like on a very subconscious level. Yeah. So
yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of survivors, they're kind of the first wave of awareness about abuse tends to be stuff that's really extreme. They tend to find us when they're in crisis, when things have gotten so bad that they can no longer hang on anymore. And what you're talking about, like the more subtle stages of awareness, these tend to be months, if not years down the road, where a person's like, oh my gosh, I grew up like that. I never realized that was a problem because I wasn't being yelled at or threatened or cussed out or, intimidated. It was just everything I did was wrong.
Yeah.
And then you kind of start putting the pieces together, like, oh my gosh, and maybe you even had a well-intended parent who was just hypercritical, for their own reasons,
Exactly.
And then you just realize, oh my gosh, no wonder, like I have trouble with self-esteem. I have trouble having confidence in my decisions. I'm continually thinking everybody else knows better than I do.
Right.
And that's such a massive piece in healing, because until a person truly understands, you have to be able to tell the difference between like a safe situation and an unsafe situation, a safe person and an unsafe person, and be able to navigate your environment. And until a person can do that, what is in their environment is just a crapshoot.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that I don't know about you, Dana, but for me, getting into more bad relationships after the first initial relationship in my life, meaning my parents, I came out completely like, I had this idea of what marriage was, what love was, what it was all supposed to look like, and it didn't look anything like that. And so I assumed automatically that. And also I had this idea that I should accept less than my mind or heart would tell me I deserved. And I would be like, well, it's good enough because, I don't deserve anything better, because that essentially was the message I was always given. I don't know if I'm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is, I think, more of that subtle erosion. Mm-hmm. When you start realizing like, oh my gosh, like I just have been I've never been on track.
Yeah.
Like I really don't. Yeah. Like I don't know who I am. I don't know how I think or feel. And it's just this period where it's really overwhelming to just be like, somebody once said in my support group, that it was so profound. We were reading some book. I think it was that Pete Walker book on CPTSD. And they had said that they realized that their personality, like more of that over friending of people, like the ingratiating kind of behavior.
Yeah.
They were like, oh my God, my whole personality is one giant coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And if I get rid of the coping mechanism and start interacting with reality in like a authentic, sincere way, like I don't even know who I am.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's powerful. It's wild. Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that we all have to, as survivors, as even while we're victims, we have to start to recognize that until we can learn to self-validate, we will never be safe from people like this. If that makes any sense at all. We will never be able to self-actualize until we can say, hey, you know what? I'm all right. It's okay that I'm who I am, and to accept ourselves unconditionally, to where, we have flaws because we're human, but we're going to be like, okay, well, maybe I don't like the way my butt looks or the way my, I always forget which way is left or whatever, but overall, I'm okay. And I'm going to just tolerate that issue that I don't love about myself, or I'm going to just, not focus on the thing that I can't control or whatever. I think when we start to do that and we start to recognize that we do have value, we do have worth, and that our own feelings and thoughts are just as legitimate as everyone else's, which for me was very difficult, then that's when we can start to really begin to heal and really create lives that we have more control over,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Seems like a good solution. Anyway, are you ready for questions?
Yeah, I sure am. Do you have any picked out?
Not yet. Do you?
Okay. No, I'm going to hop in the chat though and see.
Okay, I have, let's see, I found one earlier. Oh, okay, Nails. I've got one from Nails. Says, ladies, do you think that narcissists are attracted to us because we are empaths and have a lot of traits they will never have? And I would say, to start with, I would say yes, but yes to that, but also they are attracted to the fact that we will react swiftly to their emotional outbursts and needs. So if they have a problem, it's our nature to go, how can I help you fix it? And if that means we hug them, or that means we yell at somebody for them because that person hurt their feelings, or that means we, let them talk to us about everything on their heart, or whatever it is that, whatever kind of supply they need in that moment, they see very early in our relationship that we jump, jump, jump. Because why? We react swiftly to emotional things. We are likely to try to soothe someone's emotions. So I think that's part of it. And then I think the other side of it has to be the codependency factor, the fact that something in us makes us afraid to hurt someone's feelings or anger someone. And so we do whatever we can to keep things smooth and calm. And the narcissist loves conflict. And so the further we, if we scream back at them, they like it. If we cry, they like it, whatever it is, but they want reactions from us. And we are like, we're happy to give them, until we know better. So I think it's a lot of little factors. I've seen most survivors I've seen are very attractive, intelligent people. But there are also people who have been in some way toxically affected in their life, and they tend to be people pleasers, and they tend to be people who doubt their own beliefs and feelings, just like we were just talking about. What are your thoughts about that, Dana?
Yeah, I think very few people are raised in a home where they are taught to understand and have faith in their own reality, their perception of reality.
Yeah.
So this is obviously especially the case if they come from a toxic home, where this for sure is not taught, and the exact opposite is role modeled and enforced. But as far as I think narcissists by and large are attracted to supply, what money, sex, power, like you name it. And so it's not necessarily that they're attracted to us. It's that we're the ones that tend to stick around.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Like, other people don't put up with that. Like once the crazy making, healthy people, I should say, healthy, functional people don't put up with this. So, but here's something else though. Let me add this, because this stuff's not taught and it's not discussed. And until you live it, you really fully, I just truly believe that you can't understand it. You can't even prepare yourself for it. True. I think the people that don't put up with it are us that are on the other side of experiencing it. Yeah. So, because there's so much well-intended bad advice out there. And I think most people go through life with this toolkit of like, this is how we handle conflict. This is how we handle difficult people, kind of our, it's always about communication, or it's always about, compassion or love or communication will fix anything. And, true. Until you crash into, and that tends to work out the vast majority of the time, until you crash into somebody that's deeply dysfunctional like this, and you realize, like Angie was saying, oh my God, they like conflict. Some of them that are on more the malignant end, like they intentionally push buttons to get a person to explode, or they're so selfish, but then they might not do conflict. They just want to do whatever they want to do, and they don't want to be bothered by us having issues with it, which is also infuriating, because then you're just like dealing with a stone wall,
Yes. Yes. I always say don't keep banging your head against a brick wall, because you're just going to get bloody and it's not going to change the wall,
Yeah.
Same deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the important thing for us is just to realize that not everybody is like you, and that there's different people in this world, and that the toolkit that you had is incomplete. And not only that, but there might have been some tools in it that don't work. Yeah. And so it's important. I really feel like we just need to go back to square one and just start examining belief by belief, brick by brick, everything that's in our toolkit, and figure out, okay, where are my gaps in knowledge? And the thing is, when we do heal, when we are on the other side of this, when we can see this perpetual confusion, the crazy making, the mental anguish for what it is, the next level of that is then you're surrounded by a bunch of quote unquote normal people who haven't lived this. And so then you're dealing with them being like, oh, you're making a big deal out of nothing. You're too sensitive. What about more compassion? What about commitment? What about, communication? And then it can really cause a person to doubt themselves. But back to what we were talking about originally with being grounded in your reality, when you get grounded enough in your reality, you don't care. Like you quit caring about what other people think and their 2 cents about what you should and shouldn't do. You're just like, either works for me or it doesn't. I don't give two hoots like what anybody else thinks about it. They don't get to vote. It's my life.
Yes. And that's how you stop all of this, in my opinion. That's how you get the strength to just go, that's it, no more. And that is what healthy people were already doing. And I think because of the fact that a lot of us tend to be good communicators, at least from what I've seen, um, I mean, I literally communicate for a living and always have. So it always used to shock me with my narcissistic people in my life, how I could explain something to them so very clearly, and yet they couldn't understand. I would think and think and think, how can I say this in a way that they'll catch or that they'll be willing to receive? And I would think, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going to say. And then boom, I'd fall flat because they absolutely would not hear me. And I should have just stopped trying sooner than I did. But that's why we're here now. Hopefully we can prevent y'all from trying as long as we did. Anyway, or at least help you heal faster. Do you have a question? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add to that. I think that's an important point. Like that's one of my biggest first red flags with people is I don't have these issues with other people. Like I don't have communication problems with other people. And so if my best efforts at communication either don't resolve things or make things worse, then that's a big red flag. Because again, like everybody else in my life, it's only been the problematic people in my life where no matter, and if you find yourself like analyzing and rehashing the conversation, you're like, how on earth did we get so far tangled up and in the bushes? And what do I need to do to iron this out? And you're really picking apart your word choice and all of the different ways, because these conversations are so crazy making that all of that's just, it's a huge red flag. And it's generally because that person's not seeking a resolution. Like they're either only wanting to give you half truths or total lies. And they don't want to be open and honest because then they'd have some sort of consequence.
Right.
So,
yeah, 100%.
So here's a question from Kathy who says, are we always nice? Are we always fake nice to get love?
Okay. I want to say this. I want to say that even healthy people tend to show their best at the beginning of a relationship when they're first meeting someone and first getting to know someone. They want to show their best side, right? So they may make their bed every day while they're dating that person if that person's at their house, or they might clean up before they come over, or maybe their car usually has a bunch of trash. I keep talking about cleaning up, I don't know why. Anyway, whatever. They maybe clean out their car, or maybe they go on a diet before they decide to be intimate with that person because they want to lose the pooch a little bit or whatever. And does that mean that they're lying to that person? I mean, maybe not. I wouldn't say lying. I would say romancing or trying to impress. However, this becomes toxic when it's something like they rent a car for their first 10 dates and pretend like they're a millionaire and really they're just the guy that works at Domino's or whatever, as the delivery driver and he owns a Pinto. I don't know. Or if it's a woman and she never says she has 6 kids at home and you've dated her for a year, you had no idea she had kids at all or whatever. These, this is the type of thing a narcissist will do, I think. And those are both kind of silly extreme examples, but I don't know about silly.
I don't know about extreme either.
Yeah.
To be honest.
That's true.
Yeah.
But for example, and then there are people who lie about legal issues, and I mean, it doesn't matter. The point is, do we empaths tend to, or codependents tend to be liars at the beginning of relationships, or tend to try to show something that we're not? I would say that mostly not. But I would admit to having been slightly more interested in sports than I really am when I met my husband. I mean, like I was willing to watch them with him at that point. And then eventually I said, listen, I really don't like sports, but it took a while before I admitted that because it was a thing that I thought he cared about. And I kind of regret that a little bit, having, played that game. But, it is what it is. So,
Yeah.
thoughts?
Well, and I think for a lot of us, if a person has attachment issues and they are more on like the codependent side of the spectrum, if their mindset is, I don't want this person to leave, I don't want any relationship in my life to ever end.
There it is.
Then what else is there?
Right.
So you're not a person like that's not going to feel comfortable with being assertive. They're not going to feel comfortable with conflict, and they're sure not going to feel comfortable with deal breakers.
There you go. That's exactly, yeah.
So all that's left is ingratiating behavior, really suppressing any type of like discomfort or negative emotions. So it leaves a person kind of in this people-pleasing, saccharine sweet zone.
That is an excellent point, actually. Well, yeah. And that's really, it really is. And it's so true, because that's exactly, I guess, in some way what I was saying when I said when I met my current husband, which I kind of was cool about sports when I really am not that cool about sports. Like, I don't care if he watches them, but I don't want to have to watch them too. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think I did that a lot in all of my relationships coming up, where I was always like being more laid back than I wanted to be about stuff, or I was being more, like you said, I was not, my deal breakers weren't firmly in place, and my ability to, I was constantly like by nature, I am not the sort of person who's like, oh, let me take care of you, la, la, la. But I would pretend to be when people seemed like they wanted that. And that's weird to me now to even say that out loud, but it's really true. It really was the way I lived in relationships until the point at which I started to recover. And I guess, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And Kathy's saying, yes. She said, it's the whole, like, I hate you, don't leave me.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. Like, if that's the mindset, then there's some deeper, like, abandonment issues at play.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, for me, so much of this stuff, like when I have these aha moments of, oh, you know what, bingo. Sometimes just the awareness of what's going on is enough to radically change my behavior for the positive.
Absolutely.
And then you realize, oh my gosh, I have been hanging on to this is going to sound really harsh, but a sack of trash. There's nothing here for me. Like this person only brings garbage into my life. I've been hanging on to a sack of trash, trying to convince myself it's a 5-star meal, or that it can be someday. And it's not.
So
it's just a bunch of garbage. That's all I ever get from them. And once I realized, like, this is some unresolved stuff that I have in my past, it made it so much easier to walk away. It was when I wasn't aware that this program was running in the back of my mind that I would get so incredibly anxious and like upset and nauseated. I had a really hard time with things ending. And then just realizing, we read a book in our book club called Necessary Endings. And I think that was a pretty pivotal point. Actually, it was a really pivotal point for me, because he talks about basically everything is going to end. Yeah. And how, if we want to have a good life, like, we have to say no. It's going to mean saying no to certain things so we can say yes to other things. And we have to just prune, the distractions away, whether it's toxic relationships, toxic people, just things that don't nourish us in the direction that we're going. And that was so eye-opening. So I would encourage you guys to think about, like, the different relationships you have in your life and how do you handle loss. So just some food for thought.
Really great points. Yeah. So I have a good question from Rumi here, who said, well, Rumi's Rue. I don't know, maybe it's Rue. Either way, Rumi's Rue says, how does one deal with negative flashbacks? It does get back the more you heal, but it doesn't completely go away even after going no contact. And I think that for me, this is about mindfulness, being aware of what we are feeling in the moment, processing it in the moment if possible, and if necessary, using pattern interrupts to get us through the moment until we can deal with it. So like if we're at work and something triggers us and we have a flashback to something that was terrible in our past, we can then say, okay, I'm going to put a pin in this and I'm going to move, I'm going to use a pattern interrupt to distract my thoughts enough that I can change them. And then I'm going to go home and deal with this later. And then make sure you do that, journal about it or whatever you need to do to process the emotions and release them. That would be my personal advice. What do you think, Dana?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with the mindfulness. And I think, yeah, just getting back into the present moment, grounding yourself, maybe developing a mantra of like, be here now. I am here now.
Yeah.
And in realizing the past is in the past. It's sort of like, it's the saying that anxiety is oftentimes when we're anxious about the future. Depression is when we're angry or sad about the past, and that the present moment is currently unfolding. And so a lot of these flashbacks do come up. One thing that I don't have them so much anymore, but if I start finding myself slipping into like being angry or any type of like uncomfortable emotion, at this point in my life, I'll try, I tell myself, I'm like, Dana, basically it had to hurt this much in order for you to get this lesson. And it had to hurt this much for it to end. Because my goodness, if it had been less painful, I probably would have justified it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have ended. So like that pain, all of that discomfort, those emotional flashbacks, even though it feels like they're the enemy and there's something to avoid, there's a lot that we can squeeze out of that. And realizing that every emotion that you have, no matter how uncomfortable, is there because it has a message for you.
Oh, yes.
And it's on your side. It's designed to keep you safe. And so if you can just reassure yourself of like, this pain has a message for me, and the message is to stay away from this person and anybody else like them.
Yeah.
Like letting your brain know, like, I get it. I get the message,
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes we need a little subconscious reminder. On the same token of emotions, I just want to tack this on to the end of this. I found that I had to be angry in order to be able to fully disconnect myself in every situation with narcissists. That's hard for me because by nature, I don't get very angry for very long. And so what I tell people is when they feel that justified anger and they're still stuck in that situation, to use it to propel them forward and then process as needed. You know what I mean? Because sometimes anger can be productive if you are in that, that justified anger state where you're like, that's it. I don't care what it takes. I'm getting out of this mess. You know what I mean? And when you're there, that's when, probably a little bit less politely than I just said it, but when you're there, that's when you can really start to create change in your life. And then you will have the triggers and you will go through the things as you're healing. But exactly what Dana said is totally on point. Yeah.
And here's a follow-up from Kathy about the question about niceness in trying to earn love. Basically, she says, okay, so there's a normal level of fake. And yeah, I do.
I think so.
People who are on their best behavior, sort of like somebody in my Wednesday night chat had said, it's basically like when you meet a new person, you're meeting their representative. And that's so true. Like you're meeting the highest and best version of themselves. They're the ones that are on their best behavior. It's like a job interview.
It literally is.
They're dressed nice, they smell nice, they have manners, all of these things. If you meet a person and they don't have all of that, then that's a huge red flag because they can't even pull it together enough to try to impress you.
Right.
So if they're not making any effort in the first like 30 to 90 days, it's not going to go up from there. It just goes down. It's just like a job interview. Like after you get hired, then people settle in and then you start seeing the real them.
Right. And I think I would add that if there's a situation where somebody, you've known them for 10 years and then you start dating, that might fall a little differently. But that's not that common. It happens for sure, but then there might be reason for a little more comfort early in the relationship. But even then you would still want to see them dressed nicely and trying to sort of, if you're dating, then you would want to see them sort of trying to impress you a little bit.
Although I will say too, though, like, I think with a lot of narcissists, because, narcissists and sociopaths, they have targets. And so we can think, oh, but you know what? I went to elementary school with this person, therefore they're safe. or I've gone to church with this person. If you're not in their inner circle, you really don't know them.
Right.
And so you might have known them for 20 or 30 years, but I tell you, knowing a person and dating a person is two very different things. Like there's really just no substitution to always having like healthy boundaries and like moving slow, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Gigi says, and by the way, what's up, Mr. Gigi? He says, I think Angie, and he was talking about me talking about the watching sports things.
Okay.
He said, I think that you were just trying to be supportive in the relationship, even though you disagreed with watching sports. Not that I had anything against it. I just didn't want to do it myself. He says, sometimes when you catch feelings for somebody, you give sacrificial love. That is a really good point. And I absolutely did that. And he's totally on point. And I think that's what I did in all of my now I'm so honest, it's a little bit difficult for people sometimes. Not because I'm pushy, but I'm just like, no, that's cool, go ahead, I'm gonna do this over here if I'm not interested in whatever they're doing. And I think some people are bothered by that, but I'm very self-aware now, so I try not to waste time if I can avoid it. You know?
And I think there's a difference too. Like if you're with somebody, you know, and they really are into football and you're not, to humor that and like, you know, watch a few games or whatever. But then after it'd be different if like after you settled into a relationship or got married, you forbid them to watch football, or you were difficult or demanding or nagged or complained, or, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But as you know, you're like, hey, you know what, truth be told, like I don't like football. I like you. And so I was just trying to be cool. But hey, I'm going to go out with the girls and we're going to have a pina coladas. So like,
that's pretty much how that conversation went about hockey. But yeah, same deal. And now what's funny is totally just a personal note. I will watch any sport that any of my children or people I know in real life are playing, and I will love it and scream on the sidelines like a fan. And I'll mean it really hard. But and I don't know if any of you guys are my friends on Facebook, but if you are, then you would know that I'm always posting these band videos of my son, and you'll hear me screaming in the videos because I'm so excited about that stuff. My kids in the marching band. My point is that for me, it's about knowing people, and I don't care about people I don't know, and I don't know anybody who plays sports in real life. So anyway, go ahead.
On a side note with sports, the only games I will watch are kids' sports.
Me too, if my kids are in them. Go ahead.
I will watch them, whoever's kids are in them. I get the biggest kick out of it, especially the younger they are, the more fun it is to watch, especially like little kid hockey, because you don't know what's going to happen. Like a pro game, it's pretty predictable, right? Like they're so polished. Little kids, especially little kid hockey, they get out there, they see one kid fall over. Next thing you know, 10 more have just spontaneously fallen over, and then somebody gets a goal.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a total free for all. Like I love how quick a game can change with like little kid sports.
Yeah.
So
I do too. Yeah. Yeah. And I think another thing, okay, I got to go back. I got to say one more thing about this.
Yeah.
Like where I live, like where I grew up, we had a football team. I was in the band. The band was great. The football team, you know, they were like, sometimes they would win games. It was no big deal. And where I live now, my kid's not on the football team, but that team kicks butt. And every time I'm there, I'm like, what? And I can't even believe I actually kind of enjoy that game, because it's so cool to see these kids kicking everybody's butt, and they're the team that I'm supposed to be cheering for. Woo! So anyway, back to the real deal. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Go ahead.
Let's see. So Kathy was saying, okay, it's a balance of give and take. Yeah. I think the thing, Kathy, is to realize that when anybody meets anybody, it's normal human behavior for people to be on their best behavior, but it's important for us to understand that what we see is the highest and best version of themselves. So to not fall in love with the highest and best version of themselves, because there's odds are that's not who they really are.
Yeah.
And that's not who we really are. When we show up on a date, and, you know, how I look on a first date versus how I look, you know, on a Sunday morning when we're just bumming around the house, are two very different things.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
You know, so like, true. I mean, I still put in effort, but like, I don't put in first date effort every single day.
I mean, because you would be insane if you did. No, I'm just
I don't have that kind of time. Right. So, you know, it's important to just realize that, so we're not falling in love with the fantasy. And then also, if somebody is very quick to profess their love to you, and it's still in that infatuation window, like that first 90 or so, or maybe 30 or so days, 90 or so days, to realize they don't know enough about you to truly be in love with you. And like really like mature functional adults understand this. They understand that it takes time to get to know a person. You need to see them in a wide variety of situations. How do they handle conflict? How do they interact with people who can't do them any benefit, like the waiter or the homeless person on asking for money, or like how do they interact with other people,
their mother,
their friends and family.
Yeah.
How are they at work? How are they with money? How do they handle being sick? How do they handle stress? Like these kinds of things. And then you start to get an idea of a person. How do they handle being wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Like
those are important. That's why I always say, don't don't move in or get engaged or anything until like a year, 2 years, 3 years. You know what I'm saying? Like give yourself, I told myself when in my situation, I had to be monogamously dating someone for at least 1 year before I took any like other steps. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like if we met and we started dating, from the moment that we both said to each other, which in the case of my current husband was about six or 8 weeks in, from the moment we both said to each other, okay, let's be exclusive. Now we were both exclusive from the beginning just because we happened to be that way, but we hadn't officially declared anything until 6 or 8 weeks in. Okay, we're going to date exclusively and we're going to be monogamous. And then, for me, I was like, okay, in my mind, I have to wait at least a year before taking the next step where we're going to either move in together or get engaged or whatever. We ended up moving in together first because I didn't want to have to get divorced again. So I wanted to make sure. And then we got married about 3 years later after that, eventually. So, but I guess I was telling you that for a reason, and I don't know what it was, but there it is.
I think you're just saying, the whole like moving slow, because it just takes a while to really know a person. And I think those of us that have, dated or moved in with narcissists or sociopaths, like it's amazing how, my goodness, I lived with Jack for, I don't even remember, 2.5 or so years, 3 years. Yeah. And he was Prince Charming the whole time.
Wow.
So, I can only look back on that relationship and just, it was my first instincts about him that were right. That was it. That's all I had to go on. He was never, verbally abusive. Like there was some gaslighting, but it wasn't awful. But that went south real fast. And it was crazy. So I think just you have to learn to trust your instincts in order to follow them.
Yeah.
And that's a big skill. And just having that attitude of abundance and realizing that it goes back to the attachment stuff. Like if we're, a securely attached person, they're not afraid of like losing out on a good thing because they're like, there's lots of fish in the sea. But an insecurely or anxiously attached person is like, I don't know, this one might be like the one. What if they're like the one that's going to repair every single childhood wound, and their love is going to squeeze me tight and make me whole.
There's no such thing.
There's no such thing. That's the fantasy that so many of us fall into. And when we can realize this is a fantasy, nobody's going to be able to do that for you.
Exactly.
And
that's true.
Like, don't fear losing out on a good person. Like if you're experiencing all kinds of mental anguish and confusion, perpetual confusion and crazy making around them, but all of their behavior seems too good to be true, then they're not for you, because the people that are for you don't come with feelings like that. Like they don't make you feel anxious and unhinged and a total mess.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think for me anyway, and I think for a lot of people, when that's all I knew, I only knew that feeling. I didn't understand what it really felt like. Like I only understood false security, which is what narcissists are so good at dishing out up front, but I didn't understand that for a long time, and this is interesting what C. Rob says. It kind of goes into this conversation. She said, my manipulative, abusive husband says constantly, I loved you before I met you. And she says, it bothers me very much. And that's exactly, yeah, because what that is I love the concept of you and you happen to fit the concept or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And I get that. And even though it sounds romantic, and I will admit to having, sang that one song to my kids about knowing I loved them before I met them, but that's different, isn't it?
Oh, it's a totally
Yeah.
different zip code completely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then Kathy says how he handles being wrong is the ultimate narcissist test. And she's so right. That's absolutely the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I Connected here has a question. What is the difference between instincts and emotional thinking?
Good question. I mean, it depends on, I think if you're using instincts in like a non-scientific form, they would be the same type of thing, sort of. But I mean, I see instincts as more of human instincts, like babies come out knowing how to breastfeed. That always amazes me. That has to be an instinct, you know. But I think instinct is geared towards survival mostly.
Yeah.
And so sometimes instinct isn't going to be the right choice in a logical world when emotions can confuse you. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say instincts are more, they come from a very primitive part of our brain.
Yeah, primal.
So like the amygdala and kind of more like brain stem type areas, they're very rarely wrong, because they're advanced. They're the most advanced part of our brain. Those
right. True instinct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's designed to keep you safe. So like those feelings of fear, especially feelings of fear and danger, like that stuff is just deeply, it's like your lizard brain, like that stuff is deep in there.
Yes.
And odds are when that stuff is signaling, it's because there's a deeper, like a subconscious part of you that's, or maybe even conscious, but you're suppressing it. You're picking up on something that doesn't add up. Generally, some sort of, something's off, or there's some sort of insincerity.
Yeah. And I think when emotions get involved with it, that's when we get confused, I think. And that's, I guess, what I was trying to, because I think we often confuse emotion for instinct. And how do we describe it in such a way that they understand it better? I mean, so an instinct is something that's almost involuntary.
Yeah, I would say instincts and voluntary, they oftentimes don't make sense.
Right.
And the feelings of fear and danger will cause generally like a visceral reaction in a person. It's like a sinking feeling in your chest. It's a pit in your stomach. It's knots in your stomach. It's that feeling of, I need to leave. I need to get out of here. I feel like I might be in danger. I don't trust this person. It's a feeling of something's off is just what it is. And to the degree you experience it is generally the degree of danger that you're in.
Right. And here's an example, really quick one. The day I married my ex-husband, I remember standing there at the altar screaming to myself on the inside, run! And literally like having to force myself to stay in there and feeling completely like wrong. But at the same time, my head was telling me this is just, this is normal. This is wedding day stuff. It's no big deal. Just go through with it. And I remember literally being proud of myself for having done it, for having gone through with something that was so horrible in the end. But in the moment, I thought, I did it. I can't believe it. I'm so proud of myself for pushing through that difficult moment. And that's where my stupid emotions got wrapped up with my stupid, it's not stupid, but that's where my emotions took over and told my instinct it was wrong. And I think that was probably, in hindsight, I think that was one of those things where, again, growing up, being told everything I thought, felt, or believed was not right or wasn't acceptable, I didn't have any conviction. And so even when my body was like, get the hell out of here, I was like, yeah, it's cool. I got it. It's fine. Because that's what I had done my whole life up to that point, and did for several years after that as well. But anyway.
Yeah. And here's a comment, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, but Jojanki,
Hmm.
I'm sure I'm way off base with that. But she says instinct is an amygdala reaction. Emotional thinking has hope sprinkled all over it. I like how you differentiate that. She says, as in, I hope he'll change back into how he was in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think that's true. To me, I think emotional thinking is uh, more like, yeah, like wants,
Yeah. But
right?
I think I confused it in the past is what I'm trying
Oh,
to awkwardly
totally.
say. Yeah. I confused emotional thoughts and instinct with, yeah, with,
Oh, I think everybody does until they get T-boned
yeah,
like this, and it's like a hit and run accident, and then you're kind of left scratching your head while you're sitting on the side of the road wondering what on earth happened and
yeah,
how can you prevent this from happening again.
yeah, yeah. And I
Because
know,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I notice a lot of times, even now, you know, I sometimes find myself feeling guilty for following what I know now is instinct, and then I have to remind myself, "It's cool, honey. You're okay." You know what I'm saying? You're allowed to have boundaries and whatever, and you're allowed to say what you really think. But I think that it's so hard to learn how to validate yourself as you're growing forward, that even when you feel like you're relatively healed, you may still have moments where you got to go, okay, hold on, what am I doing here? Is everything okay? And like self-check almost. I would recommend almost everybody self-check anytime you doubt yourself, is what I'm trying to say. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And Kathy here says instincts can't be enough against these tactics of these predators. We are so sick, we many times go against our instincts anyways because we are so starved.
exactly.
And I
Yes.
agree with that. And one of the handful of kind of antidotes to this is we need to fill our buckets. So we need to stop being so starved.
Yes.
And it's really difficult for any human being. We all have these different these different needs buckets that we need to get filled. And we have a bucket of emotional needs. If that bucket's been low or bone dry for a really long time, and we've been walking around feeling unloved, unimportant, um, lonely, then we're not going to be thinking clearly because our brain is going to downshift into getting those needs met. And so, like we were saying before, then you find yourself cuddling up to a sack of trash,
Hmm.
trying to convince yourself that you can have a relationship with that, and that doesn't work with a person that's behavior is just garbage. So if you can start filling and especially if a person's made, this is so common, and I get it because I still struggle with this, but making another person their whole world, where, especially their abuser, they're like, okay, this person is my everything. The abuser might try to get you to not spend time with your friends or your family or have a life outside of them. And it's really difficult to walk away if all of your support system, your emotional needs are all met by this one person. And that one person is incredibly toxic.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of kind of shoring up your dams before you go to leave, if at all possible, if that's if that's a safe thing for a person to do, to get out there, start building up a support system. It's important to have friends. It's important to have hobbies and support, whether it's a therapist, a life coach, some friends, spiritual support at church, you name it, because the odds of a person leaving and staying gone when they have a solid support system in place is significantly higher than them being on their own and then leaving and then having to deal with all of this all alone. It's really, it's awful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Sam said something interesting that I wanted to share. He said when his ex didn't get away with something, she would want to have a talk in crowded places. And then he said she would speak looking around so others would see her teary eyes and made so many more facial expressions and gestures than she would in private. And I find that to be incredibly huge red flag. We didn't read that one yet. Oh, and he adds it's a perpetual state of crazy. Yeah. I just think that's such an interesting comment because I've seen that. I've seen narcissists play the victim. That's the narcissist playing the victim in public, trying to get more attention from other people. And of course, because she's getting all of this attention from the people around her, and doing the teary-eyed thing and acting like she's a victim here, he's almost compelled to let it slide. Like maybe because of the energy that's in the room, or maybe because of, at least in the moment, he's not able to get upset or angry about it. And if he does, then he looks like the bad guy. I just think that's interesting, an interesting tactic. And I've seen similar ones where they would try to have discussions with me in public places, I think, in order to control any sort of emotion I could react with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Kind of
if you have like a real kind of malignant one that's sadistic, and they really enjoy causing a person pain, and they will do that. They'll poke those buttons in public to get you to respond, or to kind of put you on tilt.
yeah.
And
And it
then
adds to the
mm-hmm.
humiliation factor. Sorry.
No, totally. And then the target is on tilt and starts becoming really emotionally reactive, because it's like, oh my God, what's going on? And then there's just this unhinged feeling and the scramble to get things back on track.
Yeah.
But they will oftentimes stay like just cool, calm, and collected,
Mm-hmm.
and continue to poke like, well, this is just really strange. I just can't believe that you're acting like this. Or in Sam's case, maybe really amping up the emotion of, I don't know, I just try so hard to please you and nothing I ever do is good enough. And you're just sitting there like, what the hell? Like, you're making it seem like I am this abusive person, and you're saying all of the right things. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And you're like, whoa, like, yikes. I got to get out of here. Like, this is nuts. This is nuts. Yeah.
It's gaslighting in one form. I mean, because using other people sort of against you. And also it adds to the, see, I told you he was crazy thing. I told you she was crazy. You know what I mean? When somebody happens to see you together in public, or you're at a family event and this happens or whatever, I told you they're crazy. When you do react in a normal, relatively rational way by getting upset because they've whipped you up into an emotional frenzy up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very interesting. Yeah. And New Yorker says, when you're used to getting crumbs, you'll take anything to get your FaceTime for relationship time. I think that's
the
intermittent reinforcement. You're like, oh yeah, you were nice to me for 20 minutes today. Maybe tomorrow I'll get 40, and that sounds sarcastic and I don't mean it to, but that's really how it is. And I didn't even recognize that until I was doing my research in this field. And I was like, oh, holy crap, that's why I stayed so long.
Mm-hmm.
Intermittent reinforcement, crumbs. Yeah.
Yeah. You're just looking to, for a safe place.
Absolutely.
Is what a lot of it is. And it's scary, because the person, if they are really starved out, and these manipulators can come on real strong, and they can come on like they're, your savior or your best friend or a soulmate, mm-hmm. or the answer, basically. And it can make it can make a person feel really loved really fast. And then when a person feels like that, they let down their guard and they start snuggling up to that. And then it takes a while, because this is why people struggle with feeling like kind of caught in those crossroads of, I really want to be loved like that again, but I'm terrified of being hurt like that again. And the loved like that again tends to be this superficial, inflated degree of charm that they come on with, because it's an act, it's a performance. Normal people can't live up to that. And they won't do that, because they're not trying to manipulate a person's emotions.
Right.
They're just being themselves. But emotional, narcissists and sociopaths and other types of emotional manipulators put on a performance. And so they seem like, oh my gosh, they're my soulmate. They're this perfect partner, because they're so in sync with you so right away. And they sell you on this fantasy, but none of it's real. This is just how they go about, getting their needs met. And then you start seeing that the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde side of their personality coming out.
Yeah. It's excessive. I mean, it's
it's
a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is a pretty common thing. Like Mickey says, in her case, he was so sweet to her in private, and then in public, he was a completely different person. I experienced that, especially when I was younger, with guys. Like, they would act one way in private, and then around their friends or in public, they would be not so nice. But then as, a child and as an adult when I was married to a narcissist, in both of those cases, it was the other way around. It was negative at home and positive in public. So to just minimize it to 2 words, negative and positive. But yeah, the abuse would only happen in private for me, as in most of those situations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like this, and you may have read this, and if you did, stop me, but what Johanna said, or Johannake, I don't know how
Mhm.
to say it, Jojo, you don't want to be stuck in either of those spots, lizard brain or instinct, rather nurture intuition, but it's a long journey. I think that's profound and exactly Joanne. There we go. And that's exactly the point, I
Yeah.
think.
I took a note the other day. I was talking to a gal. Here it is. I was talking to a gal the other day who um, uh, developed mouth cancer, and ended up having part of her tongue and jaw and neck and all of this removed. Anyways, she's been 2 years cancer free now. And she had mentioned one of the things that she struggles with is what is known, I guess, in the cancer community as quote unquote everyday health competence. And so bear with me here. So she was telling me that with cancer survivors, one of the challenges is when problems surface. If you have a mole, for example, or a new freckle, or something starts feeling a dry skin, something starts feeling different. It's really common for, obviously, understandably, cancer survivors to fear, oh my God, the cancer has returned. And it's very similar with those of us that have gone through narcissistic abuse. So we have to kind of relearn this like everyday, I guess, trust competence or
Yeah.
like interaction competence with people. So when anybody goes through anything that's traumatic, there's part of the healing process is like regaining your sea legs about understanding what's a problem and what's not a problem. And it happens across the board. And it's a big thing for survivors of this to just learn how to get out of that instinct mode, and or at least where you're not in it all the time. But I think a big part of it is realizing that I think before, so many of us, we trusted people, we took them at face value, and we gave them complete trust until they did something to break it. Whereas the healthy way to go about things is to have trust that's earned like little by little with consistent appropriate behavior over a prolonged period of time. And so it's okay to have a healthy degree of skepticism about a person. All that's just information. And so if somebody is too good to be true, or they seem like they're a problem, then these are the signs that we kind of need to either basically put on the brakes and just slow down and kind of keep some emotional distance, or just leave. I mean, it just depends on the vibes that you're getting. But I think the old us oftentimes stayed in these situations needing that concrete proof and being like, well, they haven't done anything yet. I feel like rude. Or maybe it's my PTSD if I just up and leave. And then we hang on until they prove us right.
Yeah.
But we don't have to do that.
Right. And I think that's part of the reason that I like to say, give yourself rules, give yourself timelines. Like when I was a single mom after I got divorced, my timeline told myself that I had to wait at least a year to, past the point I was being monogamous till the point that I would agree to the next step, whatever that was. And that seems silly, but it actually probably saved me from at least one bad marriage, if we're being honest. So, yeah. So I wanted to, LJ asked a question. My ex-narcissist just texted me. Was it your turn? Did you have a question?
No, go for it.
My ex-narcissist just texted me, can you give me an update on the kids after not seeing them since we divorced 4 months ago? I'm angry. Should I respond back? And I feel like this. I feel like somebody said, make them wait a little while. And I think that's it. And I think that's legit. But I mean, he's texting you after 4 months. Like my ex-husband, after 9 years, found that I had filed for child support at some point, and ended up actually calling me and saying, aren't you going to do that adoption for him at some point? Wasn't I going to let my husband adopt him? And I felt pretty angry about that as well. But I think in this case, I mean, I don't know how you go 4 months without seeing your own kids. I would say don't respond right away. If you do respond, I would make it they're still alive and you know where they are or whatever it is. I'm sure that they have, I assume you have some sort of visitation plan in place, and I hope you're documenting all the times he doesn't show up. That's what I would say. And I don't even know if you have to respond to that. I mean, I think you have to probably legally a little bit, maybe, but I would make it as brief and, you know, an update on the kids. They're all still alive. You know, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Dana?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how old the kids are.
Good point.
You know, if they're teenagers or they're, I guess, even preteens nowadays, if they have their own cell phone, like, you know,
Oh, good point.
can he contact them? Like,
That
what
didn't even occur to me. Yeah.
what effort is he making? But if we're talking, you know, under the age of 8, I don't know how old kids are nowadays when they have phones, but it seems like it's getting younger.
Mine were all 10 and 9 or 10.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, like 10 and over. Yeah, if they're under that, then I don't know. It might be worth a phone call to your attorney to just see, like, he's, you know, it's been 4 months. We haven't heard from him. You know, what should we do? I definitely agree with, I wouldn't respond right away because that sets the precedent. If he can say jump and then you say how high.
Good
So
point.
it's important to just pay attention to the tone that you're setting. So, you know, he hasn't bothered for 4 months. Calling your attorney, getting back to him in a day or two, he can chill. So he needs to learn he doesn't get to control the shots like that.
Yeah, give us, LJ, if you're still listening, give us a little more information if you can. If you have anything in place, how old the kids are, things like that. I think if you're not legally required to respond, I wouldn't respond, but I think you may be, depending on your custody agreement. And I agree with Dana. If they have their own phones, why is he texting yours? But
yeah,
I agree. Okay.
And here's another question from Kathy, who says, "Why don't we feel the attraction to nice guys?"
Okay, let's talk about that. So one of the things that I used to always say, oh, I like bad boys. I just do. I like a tortured artist type. I like this or that. And what's funny is that the older I get, the less attractive I find those jerks. But but there's still a part of me that notices, you know, like characters. Okay, I'm going to just tell you a really disgusting thing about myself. There's a character on The Walking Dead called Negan. Does anybody know?
Yes.
I think he's so hot. And that's so messed up of me to say that. He's such a narcissistic psychopath or whatever, right? But I think he's adorable.
I was thinking the other day, I think Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones is hot.
See, I don't even watch that. So
oh my God. Well, he's a total psychopath. And I'm like, this is where I go wrong with men. Like, I need to, because, yeah. But yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated with Gus Fring on Breaking Bad, you know, the guy that the psychopathic drug dealer guy. Yeah. I'm fascinated by that character. Maybe because I'm just fascinated by psychology, but it's not like I'm into that guy in other ways, but Negan, I'm going to be really honest with you. Like if I ran into him in a dark alley and he didn't kill me, I'd probably be like, let's go, man. Come on. Messed up. But I think being attracted to nice guys has to do with thinking with your logical brain and not your animal brain. And that sounds weird, but asking yourself, you know, what is it that, you know, of course, there's such a thing as somebody who doesn't obey every rule and who also does enough right things that they don't ruin lives. And what I mean by that is like, you know, maybe like my husband's an IT guy, and then he's also like somebody that, you know, built a bar in his basement and has his friends over every other weekend, and they all like, you know, do whatever people do, you know. I don't know. So you can be somebody who's kind of a societal rebel and still be a decent person, I think is the point I'm trying to make. And I know plenty of bad boys who are not really bad boys, who just, I don't know how to explain that better, but I think it's about logical brain versus Dana, help me out. I'm having a day.
You know, and I think it's not even just women, it's men too. It's problematic people to come hand in hand with intensity. And that level of intensity, you know, it comes across, we were talking about this last week, it comes across in very different ways. For men, they might come across as really kind of domineering and kind of take charge. And they just kind of have this kind of almost, I don't want to say like kind of just domineering thing about them. Whereas women that come across like that have this level of intensity come across as incredibly, they lead with their sexuality, come across as very seductive, either emotionally but generally sexually.
Yeah.
And so either men or women that fall for this, when somebody is if you've been going around feeling unloved or unimportant or lonely, and somebody like that is showering you with all of this intensity, and because they like lock on target.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about, oh man, the way that he or she looked at me, they looked at me like I was a snack. Yeah. Kind of thing, and like literally that's what it is. It's a predatory gaze. Like they will just lock on, make you their sole focus in their whole world. And like the whole, Christian Grey, Anastasia Steele thing in 50 Shades of Grey, that level of like locked on target, a lot of women misread this as like, true love, or, it makes a person feel so important and loved, but it's not. It's psycho behavior. And it's obsessive, and it's possessive, and it's stalking, and it's the reality of that. When somebody makes you their whole world, it's a problem. It's 100% of the time a problem. Like normal, healthy, balanced people don't become obsessive and possessive like that right out of the gate.
Right.
Yeah.
Kathy adds that she said, we're drawn to those Walking Dead hot types. She says, is that because we feel we have nothing to offer, so we look for big personalities? I think that might be part of it, but this is something different for me. This is like this is a visceral thing for me, which is weird because I don't want to like that guy. I think he's gross. You know what I'm saying? But like in this case, it's different. It's like I would never date somebody like that in real life or be with somebody like that in real life. But the idea, like, there have been moments during the show when I've been like, oh, I can't believe I'm feeling like this. That's weird, and so it's a logical, it's a physical, almost reaction to someone in my case. But I do think that I may have been drawn to big personalities when I was in a different place in my head. I do think I might have been drawn to somebody with that type of personality for that reason. But then Mickey says, I like confident bad boy types because I'm so quiet and shy, and she likes those traits in men because she doesn't have them herself. And I think there's some validity to that as well. But then Kathy says, how do we stop the empath behavior if we meet a nice guy? Did I read that right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. A lot of this like empath behavior is really kind of a euphemism for terrible boundaries. And I think it's really important.
Codependent, not empath. Go ahead.
Well, I would say both.
You think?
Yeah, I do.
I guess
I really do. Because if a person is hyper aware of other people's emotions at the expense of their own, that's a boundary problem.
Definitely.
And I get it because I identify as an empath as well. But we've got to be able to have those boundaries so we're not driven by our emotions to like it's a knee-jerk reaction to take care of everybody else, or we're not being puppeteered by the emotions. So understanding like where you start and end and where another person starts and end is critical with understanding healthy boundaries. And I know the kind of this blurring of boundaries and all of this kind of feeds into this whole romantic fantasy about all of this. But that's another one of those other things. It's like, nope, that goes in the fantasy bucket. And so when we can see it as the problem that it is, it's much easier to address instead of just and I get it because I've been there too. A lot of us just chalk it up to like, well, I'm an empath. I guess, I'm just going to be dragged along because I'm just so hypersensitive to other people's emotions. And that's a false dichotomy. It doesn't have to just be that way. Like if you know where you are and where they are and who, where people end and begin, it's much easier to interact with everybody in a much more balanced way.
That's true. I think on that same note, I like to separate the codependent behaviors from the empath behaviors only because a broken empath can act like a codependent, but I don't think that, I don't even like the word codependent, but I guess my point is that when we're sensing other people's emotions and understanding them, then I think in a healthy place as an empath. When we're sensing other people's emotions, understanding them, and allowing them to take over our own, that's when I think we tip over into codependency. You know what I'm saying?
I agree completely.
Yeah. So that's, but other than that, I think there's some interesting comments here, Dana.
Okay.
May I?
Yep.
Joanne says, I get why you like, and I saw your comments, Joanne, by the way, I thank you. She said, I get why you like Negan, Angie. She said, classic narc, sometimes someone we need to run away from. It's true. But again, it's a visceral thing with me. It's not like I'd really be with somebody like that. JJ says, all to that same thing we were talking about. He says, us men are under pressure to be more macho among other men. And he thinks that's where that comes from. And I think there's some validity to that. And then Benjamin adds, I've never been the bad boy type, but now I'm changing. I'm very loving and gentle, but after she-narc, I'm not going to keep taking any crap anymore. And I want to say this to you, Benjamin, be careful. I mean, not taking any crap, absolutely agree with you, but still being gentle and kind is important if you're looking for a woman who is not a narcissist. You know, just something to think about.
Well, I think male or female.
Female.
Right. I think it's really easy and understandable for people to go through this, and they're like, they swing from having kind of no boundaries or no understanding of how to keep themselves safe, maybe is a better way to say that, to the polar opposite, which means fortressing.
Yeah.
And then they become very reactive, and any type of boundary violation, they lash out or they shut down or they, immediately go no contact. But there's that middle ground there, and that's where being assertive comes into play, and like really learning healthy boundaries. And it takes practice. And Kathy had asked too, she says, will it feel awkward and kind of mean at first to not be an empathic codependent? And yeah.
But worth it. Worth it. Just remember and sing that to yourself in your head. Oh, baby, I'm worth it. If you have to, it works for me. Because remind yourself that you don't have to treat yourself less well than you would treat other people. And you, in fact, have to protect yourself in the same way that you would protect someone you love and care about.
Yeah. And I think too, like once you start seeing manipulative behavior and immature behavior for what it is, it's so much easier to not get hooked by it and to be able to respond appropriately. So like if a person's like, oh, I need you. If you don't call me back, I'm going to kill myself. It's so much easier to just be like, okay, this is this person's issue.
Yeah. And
I need to call 911 but I'm not going to rush over there. I'm not going to spend hours on the phone. Like they need help.
Right.
And this is too much for me. Yeah. Like I don't have training in this. And even if I did, like, this is not appropriate. They need somebody else. Or if somebody starts laying it on, I knew from the moment I met you that I loved you and I want to be with you. And, oh, I just, you're too good for me. And they're kind of like playing with these poking these buttons to get you to be like, oh no, I think you're amazing too. And da, 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 da. Like when you can
that's a thing. Yes.
Yeah. Like when you it is a thing, right? Like when you can see the stuff for what it is, you just don't get all emotionally invested in it. And if you do, you untangle much quicker when that kind of behavior starts to escalate, because you just realize I don't have time for that in my life. Like I can't have a mature relationship with an immature person.
Yes.
Period. End of story. Like it's not going to work. And,
it took me until I could learn how to value myself enough to be like, I don't deserve, I deserve better than that. Like I almost hesitate to say it right now. I deserve better than that. So everybody say it out loud with me right now. I deserve better than that. Yeah. Because, right, we all do. Dana, I just realized that I have an appointment in 10 minutes. I'm so sorry. 9 minutes.
Okay.
So we may need to wrap up.
Yes.
Sorry.
No problem. Well, let's just wrap it up now. So you've got some time. Okay. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We do this every Tuesday. Next, we alternate channels. So next week we'll be over at Angie's channel, Queen being YouTube, Angie Atkinson. So check her out. Make sure that you're subscribed to both of us so you get alerts whenever we go live. And see you guys next week, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And Dana, thanks as always for having me. I appreciate it.
I enjoy having you. So
right on.
See you next week. Okay. Bye.